Good afternoon, and welcome to the Rotary Club of Madison. I'm Teresa Holmes, Club President. Thank you for being with us today. Today's meeting is being sponsored by Peter Covey and Terry Heinrichs of Merrill Lynch. Our thanks to them for their support of today's luncheon. Let's direct our attention to the opening music. Dick Lovell will lead us in the singing of You're a Grand Old Flag with Elaine Mitchler on the piano. And then Dick will lead us in the singing for our feature song of Lean on Me. Following Dick's song, guests will be introduced by Rebecca Dopart.
You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true under red, white, and blue, where there's never a boast or brag. Should old acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the grand old flag. All right. Whoa, what a start. Now we're going to salute Mr. Bill Withers on this one, and if any of you have Bill Withers' song range rather than mine, on the chorus, take it up an octave. If not, we'll just do the best we can. Here we go. Oh boy. Do, 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 do. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long when I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Woo, good job. Thank you, Elaine.
All right, was anyone else singing the upper harmony that I was? Yes. I'm Rebecca Dopart. I'm the president of the Meritor Foundation, and I'm going to introduce our guest today. Amy Baskin. Oh, please stand when I introduce you. Amy Baskin is a guest of Brian Baskin. Welcome. Kathy Kuntz is a guest of Lee Schwartz. Tom Long and Leah Schmid are guests of Anita Muhammad. Charles Miadzi is a City of Madison Alder joining us today, a guest of Jason Ilstrup. Yep. Roger Stouter is a guest of Rob Stroud. Terry Young is a guest of Donna Beastman. Tom Kaminsky is a guest of Andrea Kaminsky. Carrie Bolig is a guest of Cassidy Wortenweiler. And Tarek from WIS-I is joining us, somewhere in the room. Hello. And Bernard Groth is from Rotary Club 1 in Chicago. a guest of Karen Kendrick Hands. And then we have a visiting Rotarian, Ed Futa from Honolulu, Hawaii, who's going to be joining us. Welcome.
I heard Ed Futa won't be a guest soon. He'll be a Rotarian in this club. Yes. It's just approved at the board this week, yes. Okay. I am pleased to introduce new members to our Rotary Club today. We will start with, and would you please stand with your sponsor, Sarah Onstadt. Please stand with your sponsor, Janet Prino. Sarah has been loaned the classification of Government Federal and is State Director for the Office of U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin. She was born in Stoughton, and Sarah now makes her home on John Muir Drive in Middleton with her husband, Dave. They have 2 teenage children. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's of social work degree from University of Wisconsin-Madison. Sarah's favorite pastimes include biking, hiking, traveling, cooking, and reading. And she is ready to dig right into Rotary. Sarah, please remain standing, and will Bill Connors and your sponsor, Ron Luskin, still please stand. Bill has been loaned the classification of associations, business and professional, and is executive director for Smart Growth Greater Madison. He is a native Madisonian. Bill and his wife, Joan Soderberg, live on Border Way in Sun Prairie. They have 4 adult children. Bill attended University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he earned a bachelor's degree in history, a master's degree in public policy and administration, and a Juris Doctor's degree. He was also an alderman for 5 years and served as Sun Prairie City Council president for 2 years. Bill enjoys fantasy hockey. A new one for me to learn. Yeah. Bill and Sarah, please remain standing, and will Terry Morawski and your sponsor, Valerie Rank, please stand. Terry has been loaned the classification of financial institutions and is business development officer for Starion Bank. He was born in Terre Haute, Indiana, and now makes his home on Auburn Drive in Fitchburg with his wife, Barbie. Terry holds a bachelor's degree in secondary education and teaching from Anderson University and a master's degree in counseling psychology from UW-Madison. He serves on the board of directors for the Madison Area Sports Commission and on the Community Relations Committee of the Greater Madison Convention and Visitors Bureau. Terry also serves as foundation board member for A Grace. He enjoys exercising and golf. Please remain standing, and will Eric Schwartz and your sponsor, Mike Holtzley, please stand. Nan Zimdars is also Eric's sponsor. Eric has been loaned the classification of brokerage and investments and is an investment advisor for Kloss Financial. He is originally from Green Bay and now lives on Comanche Way, and his partner, Spence Porter. Eric holds a bachelor's degree in personal finance from UW-Madison, and he is a member of the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors. Eric has volunteered for the United Way of Dane County as a corporate ambassador and as an organizer of corporate giving campaigns. He also helped organize corporate giving campaigns for Second Harvest Food Bank. His favorite place is his parents' lake home in northern Wisconsin, where he enjoys spending time with his family and friends, and he also enjoys watching sports and traveling. Rotarians and guests, please join me in welcoming these 4 new members into our club and thanking their sponsors for sharing Rotary with them. Okay, Club VP Paul Hoffman shared with us last week that we've had a governance task force meeting since last fall. The task force reviewed the way that we select directors, succession planning for our club president, and whether club officers can actually vote at board meetings. This group has also created a conflict of interest policy for our board, a document that basically outlines board expectations, and we created position descriptions for all board officers. Our club board has approved the recommendations from the governance task force at the meeting in March, and on Monday night, this week, Monday night, we reviewed and approved our club's constitution and bylaws draft updates to be reflected from the task force recommendations. Changes to these governing documents requires membership approval. So today, we are going to go over those changes because we're voting soon, not today. Here to provide an overview is our club bylaws advisor, Virginia Bartelt.
Thank you, President Teresa. As Teresa mentioned, I serve as the club's bylaws advisor. Lower. I serve as the club bylaws advisor. My goal today is to provide an overview of the recommended updates to our club's constitution and bylaws based on the work of the governance task force. There are 7 items. The first item is to modernize the Constitution and bylaws by allowing for electronic voting. The pandemic has been a challenge in many ways, including the ability to have a vote by the membership when we don't have a quorum meeting in person. Second, adding a president-elect nominee who would be in line to be the president-elect and then president. This adds 1 more year for a club leader to prepare for their role and gives our club more continuity. In addition, it would allow only for current board members to be eligible for these officer positions. Currently, directors-elect who are not yet serving on the board had been eligible as well. We're adding language to officially include an assistant treasurer. We had used an assistant treasurer in the past, but this updates the documents to formally add that role to the governing document. There are changes to clean up language on board meeting frequency. Years ago, the board met semi-monthly and now meets monthly, so we're updating and making that change. Then fifth, as you know, we removed prepaid meals over a year ago, but our bylaws still show that meals are part of the dues structure. The new language will update this to reflect that dues are no longer include the meal cost. There's an update to the section referencing finances so that it reflects the way checks are currently issued and how our club's annual financial reports are reviewed by an accountant. And finally, the board recommends approval of a change in our new member approval process. Currently, members are allowed 10 days to raise objections to any proposed new member, or rather to the new member proposal. Rotary International removed this item from their standard bylaws, and the revision would then remove that from our bylaws. There are packets at the back table that show all of the draft edits to our Constitution and bylaws, and we'll also include a link to the electronic document in this Friday's email. Please take time to review the red line draft, and we'll be calling for a membership vote on April 21 regarding these recommended changes. The board had previously adopted an emergency resolution to allow for electronic voting during the pandemic. Because we don't have a quorum attending in-person meetings, we will be calling for the vote electronically one last time under the emergency rule. If anyone has questions, feel free to contact me, the Rotary office, any one of the board members or officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. If you have served on the Governance Task Force Committee, could you please stand? I know someone's here. Virginia, Paul's here, Rob's here. Yes, all right. Oh, and Terry's here. Yes, thank you. Can we congratulate them? It's been a long process. All right, Herman Bauman serves on our philanthropy team this year. Oh, there he is. And he has an announcement.
Thank you, President Teresa. So if you've caught any of the horrific United Nations testimony recently, you learned that Russia has added mass murder, rape, and torture against helpless citizens to its long list of atrocities. So many of you have asked, how can we help Ukraine? In response, our philanthropy committee met, and we have 3 options that we recommend. 1, you can donate to the Rotary International Foundation's Disaster Response Fund. So any donation made to this fund between now and April 30 will support disaster response grants for districts affected by the Ukrainian humanitarian crisis. The grants will be used to supply food, water, shelter, medicine, and clothing to the many who are in need. So as you know, next week we launch our club's annual campaign to benefit the Rotary International Foundation. Well, this is a chance to start early because if you give now and support the Ukrainian disaster relief effort, your gift will count towards our club's international campaign and the resulting matching dollars that support our regular international projects. And there's a match. The Philanthropy Committee has arranged $5,000 to match any gift of $100 or more through April 30th or until we exhaust that amount. There are forms at the table. If you'd like to give now, and you can give your form to any Rotary staff member here who will record your gift as part of our annual campaign, so we get credit, and send it to Rotary International. Or you can use the link in last Friday's newsletter to go online to donate. And as in past years, if you make a gift of at least $100 through our Rotary office, you will also receive points towards the Paul Harris Fellow matching points. So the second option, you can give to Rotary District, our Rotary District 6250 Foundation. There's a link in Friday's email to that fund as well, and gifts to this foundation will provide immediate grants to Rotary clubs impacted by the invasion that have a direct connection to our Rotary District. Note that gifts to this fund do not qualify towards a Paul Harris Fellow or towards our Rotary International Foundation campaign. And then 3, you can volunteer. At our last meeting, we heard from some physicians who fled Ukraine and are now living with relatives in the Madison area. They're collecting medical supplies that will be shipped to Ukraine and are seeking volunteers to help pack the supplies for shipment. They also need help with other tasks. So the packing will be done in a warehouse in Germantown, and please contact the Rotary office if you'd like more details about the dates for the volunteer service. So thank you, and please pray for Ukraine.
Thank you, Herman. I know that was a lot of information, and we will we'll have emails going out, or there'll be an email going out in the Friday's email with a follow-up to Herman's report, and then subsequent information that'll be coming next week and the following week as the Rotary International campaign begins. Okay, my Did You Know segment for today will focus on registering for our weekly meetings. Did you know that we need to pre-register for our weekly luncheon? I think I heard someone say, I didn't know. Yes, in order to attend the luncheon, you need to pre-register. Well, why? Well, when you plan to attend the meeting, we're providing a guaranteed number of meals to the hotel each week based on the reservations. So most members have been doing a terrific job of making a reservation for lunch, so thank you. But each week we do have several members who don't pre-register for lunch. And so this could cause a run short on the food and a need to have an extra setup, chairs, things like that, logistics in the room. So it's really easy to register. You just click on the link in the Friday or the Tuesday email from the office to register online, or you can text. Yes, this year we implemented the option to be able to text your reservation. Or you can call the Rotary office by noon on Tuesday. So if you do need to cancel, though, just be sure to cancel your reservation prior to the luncheon so you don't have to pay the meal cost. Because remember, we're providing a guaranteed meal count to the hotel. So if you're planning on using a prepaid meal ticket when you arrive, those little tickets that you dropped in the basket where Joyce was standing in front of the buffet line, then you be sure to have that ticket with you or be prepared to pay $20 at the registration table. When we all follow these easy steps, it streamlines the process and the staff don't need to spend extra time following up with members. It's great. One other comment. If you think you can't remember your prepaid tickets, like the president does often, when you're attending our weekly meetings, we have clips that you can use to attach your meal tickets directly to your name badge. I did that today. We have some of those clips out at the button box table, so just see anyone at the button box table, Sharon, Jane, or Pat. And remember, your meal tickets, if you bought them last July, they will expire on June 30th. I know it's a new process, and we're all getting used to it, so we appreciate your help as we work through it. Thank you. Birthdays. We have birthdays to celebrate with a bit of humor or wisdom that complements our Rotary mission. We also encourage members to make an age-appropriate gift to the Madison Rotary Foundation, rounded up to $100 for our Club Synergy Scholarship Fund. This week, I have, with permission to say, a March straggler. So, are you ready? Rotarians, if you are in the room when I call your name, please stand. March 25th, new member, Rebecca Dopart, who says, focus on people first. Thank you, Rebecca. April 3rd, Dick Pearson, who shares this message, a gentleman is a man who can play the accordion, but doesn't. April 4th, Marcio Sierra Jr. April 4th, Steve Wallman. April 5th, Loretta Himmelsbach, who shares a quote from James Norbury, author of Big Panda and Tiny Dragon. What is more important, she says, the journey or the destination? Asked Big Panda. The company replied, Tiny Dragon. It is indeed an honor to be in the company of Rotarians. April 6th, Dave Baskerville. April 6th, Rock Flowers. April 8th, George Keene. Thanks to our celebrants for their contributions to the Madison Rotary Foundation. Please join me in wishing them a happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rotarians. Happy birthday to you. Thank you, Elaine. I have members in the news today. Rhonda Adams was quoted in an article titled, The River Loves the Supportive North Side. Northside News, April, May 22. Moses Altek was quoted in an article titled, Trying to Ride It Out. Amid inflation and war, some hope to still help the consumer. Wisconsin State Journal, April 4th. Herman Bauman was quoted in the Daily Cardinals article titled, We're Not Going Anywhere. A story about how the student newspaper is adapting to changing markets, April 2nd. Kaleem Kerr was pictured and quoted in an article titled One City Schools receives $1.75 million towards K-12 school. Open enrollment to begin April 4. Madison.com, March 31st. Aurelia Estrada was pictured and quoted in an article titled Affordable Dental Care Treats to Those with No Dental Insurance. Northside News, April, May 22. And Carol Toussaint was featured in an article in the Daily Cardinals 130th anniversary edition titled Second Wave Feminism Follows Cardinal Alumni. The Daily Cardinal, April 2nd. Great news for our Rotarians. Thank you. Now, on to our program. Our speaker today is Devon Shaw, who is Meyer Bascom Professor at the University of Wisconsin, where he's Director of the Mass Communication Research Center, Research Director of the Center for Communication and Civic Renewal, and Scientific Director in the Center for Health Enhancement System Studies. He is going to talk with us today about the work of politics in the age of digital amplification, which involves deliberation among citizens, careful consideration or discussing about differing perspectives concerning issues and events of national concern. He will highlight how our communication systems, especially the interplay between news and social media and the dynamic of digital amplification they foster, are eroding the basis of our democracy. We look forward to your presentation, Dr. Shaw, and we have made a contribution to the Rotary International Polio Plus Foundation as a way to say thanks for speaking to us today. I would like to mention that if we have time for Q&A with our speaker as time ends at the end of his speech, please allow and wait for the microphone if you have a question. Rotarians and guests, let's welcome Dr. Shaw to our podium.
Thank you, President Teresa. I'm going to hopefully be able to see one of the screens that will help me make my own presentation. It's great to be back here with all of you. I've presented to Rotary before. The last time I had less gray in my beard, so I blame you because I think cause and effect means the last time I presented, I didn't have gray, now I do, so you're the fault. I'm here today to talk about, as the title suggests, what it takes to do the real work of politics in the era we're in. And the challenge I think we face is the noise that the digital and social media environment creates and how it's actually hurting our ability to have conversations, exchanges, the ability to actually talk through the problems of politics that has been at the cornerstone of how we've done deliberative democracy, how we've engaged in the back and forth of compromise, how we try to listen to each other, and how that is horribly breaking down in our society. My starting point for this, and the title is a bit of a cheeky kind of play on a very old essay from 1935, very influential essay by a philosopher and thinker named Walter Benjamin. And Walter Benjamin wrote about the idea of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. And he was saying, what happens to a piece of art when we can easily copy it? When we don't have to just have one version of it, right? The Mona Lisa is so sacred because you go to the Louvre to see this tiny painting, you know, there's something about the aura of that piece of art. What happens when it can be easily reproduced and just shared? And his argument was I'm going to read this, the most perfect reproduction of a work of art is lacking the one element, its presence in space and time. The idea of the aura of that piece of art or in the presence of it. We've all seen a reproduction of the Mona Lisa. Who's seen a reproduction of the Mona Lisa? Who's actually gone to the Louvre to see the Mona Lisa? Why did you bother, right? Why did you bother? I mean, you could actually see it closer probably in the reproduction, right? Because you could get really close up to it. In the Louvre, you're distant. You can't even get close to it. But there's something about the aura of being in the presence of that piece of art, right? Something about the authenticity of it, something about the authoritativeness of it that's essential. And what Benjamin said, building on the work of Paul Varé, and I'm going to read this as well, is our fine arts were developed, their types and uses were established in times very different from the present by men whose power of action upon things was insignificant in comparison with ours. But the amazing growth of our techniques, the adaptability and precision that they have afforded, the ideas and habits they are creating, make it a certainty that profound changes are impending in the ancient craft of the beautiful. And he was saying, how we understand art has been utterly transformed by technology. And I'm going to take that quote and I'm just going to modify a few words. Our politics were developed, their types and uses were established in times very different from the present by people whose power of action upon things were insignificant in comparison with ours. But the amazing growth of our techniques, replaced with technology if you want, the adaptability and precision with which they have attained, the ideas and habits they are creating make the certainty of the profound changes are impending in the ancient and in the craft of, and I'll add the deliberative, how we speak to one another. And I think one of the things that we have to recognize is, in the same way that Walter Benjamin and Paul Varé were recognizing, just because we have technology doesn't actually make the world better, always. And in this case, in the case of the reproduction of art, there were some of us who still clung to the notion of being in the presence of that sacred piece of art. Well, what does it mean now when we give up on the ideas of deliberation? And I want to illustrate what I mean by this and why I'm so concerned. So when I talk about the work of politics, to me, the work of politics is deliberation. It's about us talking with people we disagree with. And I think Rotarians do that all the time. I imagine many of you have different political viewpoints. I imagine that this is a group where there isn't always complete unanimity on perspectives. That's what we want in society. We want that exchange. I think social media has transformed the public sphere in a digital era in a way that makes it very hard for us to hear opposing perspectives other than as people screaming at us. Things get reduced to the worst case scenario. What we see online does not reflect the norms of deliberative democracy, right? We'd love to go, oh, look, we have this beautiful online public sphere now called Twitter. No, it's people screaming at each other. This is not a thoughtful set of exchanges that we're seeing. And to me, the window into this increasingly, and this is where I put my academic hat on, is big data. I can do surveys all day long, I can do experiments, I can do all kinds of different things, but if I can observe what people are doing day to day online, it gives me a really good window into what they're about. People lie all the time. Where they don't lie is in their behavior and what they do. What's the old adage? If someone shows you who they are, believe them. And that's what big data gives us. It's the ability to look into actions at a micro scale, but millions, tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of units. And so to me, one of the spaces we can look at this question again is Twitter and thinking about things like opinion as a form of expression. I just want to see how much time I have here. What this lets us do is look at things like connecting news, events, and discourse. Something's happening in the news, how is the public talking about it? Are they talking to each other, or are they just yelling at each other? Are they even engaging in conversations about the same topics or ideas, or are they literally talking past each other? Our most recent evidence suggests even when there's big events like a mass shooting or a crisis like COVID, we talk past each other. We don't even talk about the same events. We use different language to talk past each other about different instances of that issue. We can also see how social media drives news. And I will tell you, most of our evidence now suggests it's not that social media follows news. Oftentimes it's the other way around. That social media and what gets amplified, what gets attention, is what ultimately shapes what becomes the news. And I shared last time I was with this group evidence that showed one of the ways that Trump got outsized coverage in the 2016 election, he did it again in 2020, was by how much free coverage he got, partly by his use of Twitter, and partly because of how much it got amplified. If he got retweeted, journalists covered it. It was the laziest form of journalism I've ever seen. Herman's nodding, he's like, this is not good journalism. And that was the problem, right? It was a very easy way for him to amplify his voice by using social media to drive news. And what this lets us also do is track the amplification of elite views. A lot of times this isn't the public. This is about elites putting views out there that the public then trumpets. There's an old term, it's just imitation, right? The laws of imitation, that when we see an elite act in certain ways and we can easily do something that imitates them, we do. You know what the feature of that is on Twitter? Retweet. Just push it back out into the world. That just got sent to my whole network. And when we think about networks of networks, I don't know if anyone's ever done this who has a Twitter account, looked at how far your message has gone. I mean, I've got like 2,500 followers. It's not big. That's like a very small radio station in a very, very small northern Wisconsin city, right? That's like not big. But if I put a message out to my 2,500 followers and then that gets retweeted and gets retweeted, it can reach an audience of 50, 60,000 people. Who can Trump reach? It's incalculable in the sense of how broad that amplification of elite views operating through those Twitterverses is. And the other thing is it lets us then examine online citizen expression too. What are citizens doing in response to this? Now again, I'm not telling you this is a cross-section of what public opinion is. I'm telling you this is a very rarefied view of what we think of as deliberative exchange online, but I don't think really reflects that. So, without again getting into all the details, the work I'm going to share with you relies on an approach called computational communication science. We're taking large amounts of data from social media, analyzing it, crunching it in order to make inferences about what's happening between the news or political environment and the social media environment. What are we doing in this particular project? We're connecting and trying to answer a very old question. If you remember the Nixon-Kennedy debates, and I'm not saying anyone in this room is old enough to remember that. Shh, maybe some of you are. That was a really mean joke. You may remember at least, or heard about the idea that Nixon did not look good in the debates. He looked very haggard. He had the flu. He wasn't shaven. On the other hand, Kennedy came out there. Kennedy understood television. He understood the medium. He was shaven. He was tanned. He was rested. And the difference in the perception of the performance, whether you saw it or whether you heard it, was a lot about your experience of seeing this very composed, tanned, affable person compared to someone who's sniffling and blowing his nose and looking away and averting his gaze. And there's been scientific studies that have basically demonstrated that have shown the difference between watching that debate versus hearing that debate. And what's interesting about that is that in the time since then, the power of visuals in debates have only increased. We've actually done more and more to amplify the idea of seeing that difference between political elites. So what's the latest is we do everything we can to enhance conflict when we show you debates, split screen formats, close-ups, right? I remember, and I know many of you remember this, you remember Al Gore's sigh during the debate when he, and that was news. That was like, oh my gosh, how uncivil. He sighed during a debate. Now what do we do during debates? We have people pointing, yelling, talking over, interrupting. This format has only contributed to the performativeness of candidates to play to it. And here's what's really amazing is in a social media age, what we can do, unlike in the Nixon-Kennedy debate, we can link on a second-by-second basis what a candidate is saying, what their tone of voice is, and how they appear. Their facial expressions, their gestures, are they funny? They're showing their lower teeth because they're really mad. Oh, you see lower teeth? I'm mad, right? If you ever see someone coming at you with lower teeth, Bear, just run away. They're either crazy or angry. But this is lizard brain stuff. We know this. If we see someone frowning, it's universal. These are, what is it that drives our response? Well, now we can link exactly what a candidate is doing on the screen to what tens of millions of people are responding to it on social media, second by second, like a seismograph. And so when we tested this in 2012 with Obama and Romney, what we found is it wasn't what the candidates said. It wasn't even how they said it. What really drove the social media response, what really drove all that deliberative discussion we're supposed to have after we watch candidates discuss issues and we're supposed to go, which one do I like better? Let me vote for the better candidate. That's what deliberation and debate is supposed to be about. What do we actually do? We're drawn to whichever one looks better. We're drawn to whichever one is more dynamic emotionally. Which one gets more angry? Which one's more demonstrative in terms of their gestures? That's what drives the online response. That's depressing. So we extended this to the 2016 campaign where we had an even more interesting dynamic, which is Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And so you have a gender dynamic, but you also have the most bombastic candidate I think any of us had ever seen coming in 2016. Turned out to be a very unusual president and one that I think has fundamentally changed how we'll do politics in this country for the foreseeable future. And sadly, yes, it is too bad that is the norm. And I want to show you why I think it's that damaging. So if you look at populist styles, this is a mapping of verbal populism. You can see there's populism on the left, there's populism on the right. You can have left-wing and right-wing populists who speak in certain styles, say certain things, appeal to the people, doubt elites, doubt authority, blame people, use aggressive language. There's a certain style to populism that, again, spans the left and the right. What we did in this particular study is try to tap into the idea of what does populism look like? And is that what's drawing all this attention and interest? And so what we did is we coded a series of key variables that tapped into either verbal forms of aggressive posturing and behavior, right? Things like defiance gestures or anger or threat displays, baring those lower teeth. But also things like certain forms of disagreement or interruptions we included as verbal forms of that. We also included certain tonal variables, right? So we had visual forms, we had tonal forms, and we had actual textual forms, what you said, that might be indicators of this kind of populist, aggressive style. We did all of this using very stable methods. And if you notice, here's who's being super aggressive during the debate. It's not Hillary Clinton. It's Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is being aggressive in different ways in about 80% of debate segments coded at 10-second increments. That level of aggression we've never seen before. It doesn't compare to Romney and Obama. It doesn't compare to any other president we've looked at, candidate back to 1976. So what did this level of aggression do? So what we're able to do then, and again, I'm running a little short on time, is we can connect second by second what's happening in those 10-second increments on the screen, what the candidate's saying, how they're saying it, what they said, with the social media response. Tens of millions of Twitter posts synced up second by second with what's happening on the screen. And when we do that and sync it up, what we find is there's tremendous variability in the amount of attention a candidate generates at any point during the debate. What explains that variability? What draws the public's attention? Would it be that high watermark when a candidate says something really important? No. What we find for Trump is it's his visuals. It's his aggressive visuals. His aggressive visuals drive the reaction. They drive it within 10 seconds of him doing the aggressive display. Attention to him shoots up on social media and is maintained for over 60 seconds. He dominates the online discourse by doing that. It's not about how he says it or even what he says. For Hillary Clinton, it's more about what she says, how she says it. And it takes longer to percolate. It's slower because it's verbal. And as a result, she gets much less play in this environment. And so the takeaway here is when you look at the difference, Trump's aggressive populist style, one where he was interrupting, berating, doing all these things, won him tons of social media attention. In the aftermath of the debate, everyone's like, Trump looked great. Look at how much media attention he got. He dominated. Because that's what we live in now, is an attention economy. If you can get attention, you win. And Trump got attention. And that, to me, is this dangerous question about what happens to our politics in not an age of mechanical reproduction, but an age of digital amplification. I think the aura of deliberation is reduced. We don't need to deliberate. Let's just talk to people like us and reinforce our views and cheer it on when Trump gets real aggressive. When we go and look at what those tweets are, they're his supporters loving the fact that he's being aggressive and sticking it to an opponent. It's not about policy. It's about emotion and anger. Authenticity now is translated into channeling anger. Our leaders are not supposed to be calm and collected anymore. They're supposed to be angry. At least that's what the social media environment would tell us, which also I think is terribly dangerous and unfortunate. And authority is not conferred by title or by accomplishment. It's conferred by amplification. The more you can get your voice out there, the more powerful you are. And so, before I end, thank my colleagues on this. This is not just my work. This is many other people as well who I interact with, both at the UW and Texas Tech and University of Texas Austin, many other places. And with that, I thank you. I think we have about 5 minutes for questions. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Karen Kendrick Hands. So we have enshrined bullying. What do we do about it?
Well, I mean, it's to me, it's curious that this cycle they're having a very hard time even getting candidates to debate. that there's been a big reduction in candidates' willingness to debate, which is to me amazing because the aggressive, ugly style was actually winning the day. So maybe the real solution here is we have fewer debates. If this is what debates have become, I'm not a fan of debates because they're not about us deliberating or learning what candidates think. Even the older evidence about debates suggests that what happens during debates is we watch a debate, we have a candidate we like in advance, we hear about their policy positions, and we adjust our policy positions to match the candidate we like to begin with. It's not that we're really deliberating. We're not learning from debates and then picking the candidate that we like. And if they devolved into this, I'm not hopeful. Now, more broadly, what do we do about this kind of deterioration of our politics? I'm not hopeful. I just had 2 speakers come to campus. One's the editor of the Journal of Communication. He processes about 900 to 1,000 manuscripts a year. Said, what have you seen in the last 1,000 manuscripts that gives you hope about democracy? He said, nothing. I asked the other guy who's a specialist in public media and public broadcasting. He said, the only thing I can imagine is we reinvest in public broadcasting. That was the answer. Yeah, Maria's over there saying yes.
Hi, really compelling presentation, thank you. So I've been watching Zelensky like a lot of us have, right? And notice how good he is at working with social media. My question to you is, could it be anger, or could it be just a compelling emotion like sadness or something that he might be dishing out that's different than anger? So something to throw out. Just on the cuff here. I haven't been researching it, but I know I'm feeling the impact when I watch it.
I think he's a great example of populism on the left, right? He's speaking to his public. He's speaking with anger. He's questioning elites. He's doing all the things we think a populist would do. He's just doing it more from the left, right? Like we have left-wing populists. We don't talk about them very often, right? But there are. We think more about right-wing populists. But I think he's brilliant. I think he's brilliant both at going on television. I think he's great at using video. I think he's great at using social media. He's doing all of these same things in a way that's actually leveraging and amplifying, maybe for the good, right? Now the question is, he's up against a massive Russian-sponsored misinformation campaign. So whatever he's doing that you're seeing, that's great, but you're in networks where you're probably likely to see that. If you're in Russia right now, you're not seeing that. If you want to see public opinion for Putin in Russia right now, it's skyrocketed. It's called rally around the flag. The minute you have an external threat and you go to war and you control the narrative, right now his approval in Russia is 80%. He's not. This was almost done to solidify his domestic position, right? People keep saying, why is he doing this? That's one reason. Now Zelensky, I think he thought Zelensky would fold. Zelensky surprised him. Zelensky surprised everybody. And partly it was through his use of social media because he was able to win and curry support. And it's also, again, about amplification. Now, what would I have liked to see in a truly deliberative model? The countries of the world come together in the months leading up to this, when we saw the troop buildup, and we knew this was happening, to have a more concerted effort. Instead, we waited until something happened, and then Zelensky had to do all that he did. And then we have, Herman over here collecting donations on behalf. That's fantastic, but we could have avoided a lot of that with a stronger initial response. That's where deliberation politically would have gotten us instead of reaction, ideally.
I'd like to remind you that there's really nothing new. The president that used emotion, emotional tricks the most was one that I admire, Franklin Roosevelt.
Yeah, very good. Great user of media.
The fact that fella is mad has nothing to do with policy. When he would say, my friends, I was his friend. So the play on emotion goes both ways.
Well, I would dare to say, just again, as a counterpoint to that, I think you're 100% right about Franklin Roosevelt. He was the master of radio. I think Kennedy, who I mentioned, was the master of television. I think Obama was the master of initially digital. I think Trump has been the master of social media, and maybe Zelensky now would add to that list as a political leader. But when we look at negativity versus positivity, negativity kicks its butt. Okay? Positivity does not win the day when it comes to the attention economy. You can say you're my friend and you can speak in nice tones, and maybe that worked when Franklin Delano Roosevelt did it. It doesn't work today. It doesn't. It doesn't generate the same response. It doesn't generate fundraising. It doesn't generate all the things that modern politicians want. So I wish it worked the way you're describing. It doesn't.
Can you suggest a specific way that we in Madison, Wisconsin can find a forum for engaging in deliberative civil discourse with people we disagree with?
You know, it's interesting. This has been tried. Kathy Kramer, who's a colleague of mine who I work with, we just wrote a book, Battleground, about the state of Wisconsin, has been trying a lot of different techniques to try to do this. She's doing, she's done things like civic listening sessions and done study circles on race. Oftentimes what happens in those, and Kathy has a book on this prior to her book on Wisconsin politics, where if you get well-meaning people together and the well-meaning people are all on one side of the political aisle and then there's disagreement, you end up creating division. So how do you actually get people to talk across difference? So what Kathy's trying to do now is having people record their perspectives, and then when you're having a discussion, there's an electronic hearth, and this is a tool called, I want to say it's called Cortico, but there's a different name for it. And it's in public libraries and other places, so you can have a discussion, and then if you want to chime in, you can have someone chime in with their perspective about, you know, abortion or immigration or whatever else, and it's a recorded voice, and you hear that perspective, and that person's not in the room. And so maybe that's one way we gain it. The way we used to gain it and hear other perspectives was through the news. We used to get balanced reporting and hear opposing perspectives there. We don't consume news that way anymore. We tend to consume partisan news. We tend to consume news that reinforces our perspectives. So to me, it's harder and harder to find those spaces. And it's harder and harder to find, and frankly, there's a lot of self-selection. The people who are willing to go to those spaces are not the people who necessarily they're not, the people who go to those places are already open-minded enough. The people who don't go are the ones who we need to reach. So what do? It's a self-selection bias. I mean, I'm not hopeful, folks. I didn't come here to cheer you up, okay? I really didn't.
Ultimately depressed.
I came here to scare the hell out of you, okay? Like, get off of your butts and let's do something. And I don't know what that something is, but we need all to be thinking about it because this is society, right? We all live here. So that's my concern.
Thank you for your research and presentation today. I think this is really important information for all of us to know, and that with social media that we have, that this is a game changer going forward for politics, just as you said. However, in my opinion, I don't think getting rid of the debates is really the answer, but maybe what are your thoughts on when it is associated with things that are such importance, such as politics, changing that platform and amplifying out to everybody what you're showing us today and saying, hey, maybe television isn't the platform that's needed for such a thing as our presidential debates, but maybe we should go back to being forced to actually listening to what those candidates are saying and making it something that we're only hearing as a broadcast, not televised.
This is why I want everyone to hear this, right? Great solution. Listen, debate by podcast rather than watching. Would be a really interesting solution, right? Be a great study to go to. People learn differently. Now, I agree with you. I'd love to see debates continue if we can have real debates. My problem is, and this is what happened partly with Trump, with not just debates, but with the media. He figured out how to hack the media system. If you know, if I do X and Y and Z, I get tons of attention, even if it's the worst reasons, and the journalists will cover you anyway, why would you stop in an attention economy? If I can do all these ugly things and get the public to retweet my message and totally drown out my opposition, why would I stop? There's no reason to for them. There's no impulse. And that's the problem. We've created a system that reinforces the worst behaviors among the people who are supposed to be leading us. One more. Last question.
Hi, thank you for your presentation today. I'm always fascinated by human behavior and the studies around it. So I'd like to just ask a question for you. Are you aware of, or has there been any research around the area of correlating the aggressive nature and behavior that we're seeing in our young adults relative to the online video games and the violence that's part of that, and the prevalence of most young people being really heavily engaged in this? Because I see the response to the Twitters, and they respond to the aggressiveness.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that there's some connection between those. And I'm wondering if there's any research that has been done in that area.
In fact, there is, and in fact, it's happening at the UW. One of my colleagues, Karen Miller, you should invite her to be one of your next speakers. She is a specialist in children and media violence, and especially formative experiences of media violence. But in one of the things that we're seeing with things like video games is it's not a 2-hour movie. It's 10, 12 hours just sitting there doing this repetitive set of very violent activities, right? So there's a real big question about that. The thing about video games that's also really interesting is how varied they are now. There's some video games that are about cooperation. Some are anti-bullying. Some are about exploration and being stealth. So some really feature violence. And the question also is, are the kids who gravitate towards those kinds of games different from the kids who don't? And so there's a lot of, again, self-selection into who ends up. But Karen's research is really trying to take first a lay of the land in terms of how violent is the media content that kids are exposed to, and then what happens when they're exposed to different kinds of it. So Karen would be a great person to have. Great question. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
And with that, Rotarians, we are adjourned.